Hi, welcome again to Dvija Projects. Today's lesson is going to focus around skill development. Now, skill is a term that we have heard a lot in each of our lives. The way while growing up at home with your parents, your relatives, your siblings, your neighbors, and at school, the teachers, and sometimes our friends, and sometimes even strangers. So, skill is a big part of our makeup. How we are trained to do a particular task, as well as how we are inherently built in terms of how we go about solving a particular task, right? So to summarize, it's the ability to do something well. Yes, we are also trained to do particular tasks, but we also use our common sense in terms of how we want to go about solving certain tasks. Now, coming through learning, through the project's framework, broadly, we can classify skills to be production, management, and critical. The production is the technical aspect of it, and the management is how you really manage the process you're going to adopt in employing your technical skills in solving the problem, and how you also would bring in the critical aspect of problem solving and work with the group in solving. So broadly, production skills, management skills, and critical skills. As we go through the next slides, we will delve into the details of what these are. The design skills or the production skills, this is technical. What I mean by that is, you basically try to understand what is the situation on hand to solve the problem, right? We all have our own ways of looking at the problem, and depending on the color of the lens that you're wearing, your reading of the problem might be very different from what the other person is perceiving the problem to be. So problem definition is a very critical aspect of any project. For that matter, any situation that we have on hand, be it a life situation or a situation at work, is for us to clearly understand what the problem is. Also, most of the times we tend to get confused with the symptom of the problem versus, sometimes it is about what we need, we think is also a problem with the way we describe. So problem definition, we're not really getting into the details of how you go about defining a problem, but I strongly urge you to read up material which will be available for you in Dvija to understand the problem. The next part is the solution design on how you go about preparing to use the details about the problem to solve it. Problem analysis, again, you're going to learn certain tools and techniques in terms of understanding all the critical factors that are causing the problem. To put it simply, it is a factor. Y is a factor of many x's, and x's being the factors that are going to cause the problems, and how collectively a multiple x's can result in one bigger problem, and y could be the solution that you're expecting, and for which also you need to handle each of these factors that have a role to play in providing the solution towards the problem. So the problem analysis, and there is going to be a decision making, right? So you know what the problem is, you've also done your analysis, you've also come up with multiple options or one option in terms of how you can go about solving that problem. And when you have multiple options, you need to make a decision on what is the right thing to do so that the problem can be addressed for the best interest of not just the person who's solving it, but to every single other individual who is impacted by this problem. And eventually, it's also about educating everyone on what really happened and how a problem is solved. or how a project is handled. So it's all about putting in a good report and putting the document together, sharing all your experiences, and drafting it in a manner that every reader is able to comfortably understand, and also, get some great knowledge out of that experience. You can also be running participatory events or workshops where you can go about sharing. And we have TED workshops. At some point, you will also see Dvija hosting some of these sessions where you can come and share your experience. Okay, we are now moving on to management skills, right? Now, it is not an individual who's sitting in a closed room trying to solve a problem when it comes to a real business problem. It is about working with others. It's about working with superiors. It's about working with colleagues, peers. It's about working with juniors. It could be between white collar workers, blue collar workers. It could be with functional teams, technical teams. It could be folks on the research side. It could be folks who are completely unrelated to your enterprise but have an impact, say, with the government. That's what management skill is all about, is your ability in building a good team, or your ability to work in a team which can collectively understand, analyze a problem, and also solve it for the best interest of everybody. Right? So organizing a project team becomes very critical. There are different roles to be played, and each role has to be properly decided. The roles and responsibilities have to be established and properly communicated. All the stakeholders, identification of all these stakeholders. Now, who are these stakeholders? These are people who could be impacted by a problem, or when you solve it, maybe this individual doesn't have an issue, but when you solve the problem, say for party A, the solution may likely impact the party B, and hence it is important to also identify who are all facing the problem, who are those individuals who could potentially be impacted if the problem is being resolved. And you may have other players in the ecosystem, for example, a government, and any legislation from the government that could also impact the way you can solve this issue. So stakeholder communication becomes very important. And then finally, programming, right? And by programming, what we mean here is putting in the entire project plan, the program plan, the whole aspect in terms of budgeting on how you want to go about solving this problem. And then comes your resourcing, ensuring all resources. It's not just about people. We're also talking about technology. We're also talking about tools, alongside, of course, able men who can support in running this project. There also has to be a discipline in terms of how you run meetings, and we have multiple many techniques that are out there. You may not follow a waterfall method. You could be following an agile or a lean method of how you want to run your meetings, or how you want to go about solving a problem, how you want to get validation from your stakeholders or customers sooner as you take up this journey of solving the problem. So running meetings is a very critical part on how you're going to bring everybody in, how you ensure that the right message is being communicated in the right fashion, how you organize these workshops where people can come together, how you set agenda for each of these meetings, and how you handle communication of some critical aspects of the program. So running meetings is a very important part. Also about managing expectations. We earlier talked about the stakeholders, we talked about stakeholder communication, and we also need to understand the expectations and ensure that the stakeholder analysis is done, and then the timely communication is happening in a manner that the expectations are managed. Now, not all the time you're going to be meeting every single person's expectation, but it is critical for us to understand what those expectations are, and hence we can have plans towards communicating it in the right manner if not expectations are going to be met. Eventually, of course, everything is about delivering on time, and that's something I guess you understand pretty well. So let's move on to the next slide. Now it's the turn for critical skills, right? Let's just understand few terminologies here like zoom in, zoom out, and the big picture thinking. Most of the times when you have a situation to solve, we tend to focus, and that's how it should be. We should focus on what the actual problem is and try and solve it. But we may also miss out in understanding the whole ecosystem, right? There are multiple players and in the previous slide, we briefly touched upon stakeholders, right? So that's what we mean by the wider context here is what is the impact of the problem that I face? Is it just for my team? Is it just for me? Is it just for my team? Or is it just for my department? Is it just for the location where I'm working? Or is it enterprise wide? Or is it just for me? Or are there many other companies which also have this issue? So it's also important to zoom in when you're working on the problem to exactly understand. And as we saw in the first or the second slide about the technical skills, right? The problem definition, wherein you really need to zoom in on the problem and get all the facts about it. But while you do so, it's also critical to zoom out and understand the entire ecosystem and everybody else who's involved, right? Also, you need to really reflect upon your role. End of the day, there should be roles and responsibilities that are defined, and everybody should be playing up to their role. Yes, in one of our lessons, we also saw how increasingly the job descriptions are becoming ambiguous, and we are not having very clear roles and responsibilities being defined in the current day and age on how the business enterprises are being run. However, there should be a broad definition so that we are not stepping into other shoes all the time, and that could result in a conflict in terms of how we really work well in teams. So it's important you understand your role. Now, if you have any questions, please don't stop. Please go ahead, talk to others, talk to your manager, and try and get some clarity around your role. The third point, impact of the project on your clients. We have also discussed it alongside with point one. So I'm going to just skip that. The fourth point is reflecting upon what you have learned. Now, feedback is so important. Now, feedback is not always about getting it from an external source or from other individuals. It is also for you to take some time, maybe get a glass of juice or get a glass of beer, whatever you like, and reflect upon what you have done, how you have gone about, engaging in this project, what your role was, what is it that you've learned, and what are those learnings that you're going to take forward, right? And eventually putting it all in a piece of paper as the lessons and what it means for where you want to go in your career. How are you going to leverage on some of these learnings to build your career so you're successful? So after critical skills, we are now moving to the application of knowledge. Now, this is, in essence, a culmination of everything that we have seen in the last three slides, right? The management skills, the problem skills, and then finally the critical skills. Collectively, all of this put together would help you in acquiring knowledge, which is what you see against A. It is also going to help you in terms of application of that knowledge. And we also understood how the application is something wherein we could be trained to apply that knowledge. It's a question of using, for example, if you're doing a stock analysis, or a fund analysis, or you're solving an engineering problem. You pick an equation, and then you solve a mathematical problem, and with the result, you try to interpret what it could be. So, and there are certain management skills also that you would have acquired in terms of how do you really engage with a tough stakeholder, for example, right? Not everybody is going to be your friend. especially when you're going to have multiple ways of doing things or multiple solutions that could be provided, everybody's going to have their own choice. So the management skills and the problem solving skills and how you apply. So you acquire knowledge, you learn about application of that knowledge in really seeing and solving some real world issues. And also the assimilation of this whole thing on how you internalize all the learnings that you have got, so that you're able to register, reflect, record, and finally carry forward these learnings in adapting it. It's all about internalizing, so it becomes part and parcel of your personality on how you go about solving problems, not just now, but in the future as well. We are moving on to personal skill development. Now, please don't mistake, every other skill that you've learned earlier is also, personal skill. What we have here is the core academics, stretch learning, learner engagement, and personal skill development. But why we are highlighting these four here is these are the four steps that will help you graduate from an academic knowledge to a personal skill development. And as we have seen in the other slides, in other lessons at Twija, it is all about helping you, encouraging you to transition from a theoretical learning to experiential learning. And by really encouraging you to take up steps, small or big, in how you can pick up some of these skills. So we will learn more about that in the next slides. So now coming to core academics, right? Core academics is the fundamental knowledge, and this is what your project should, put into application. Now, you're an IT student. Naturally, you're trying to pick a problem that will help you apply the learnings that you have from your course. For example, you want to do a project on blockchain, you want to use artificial intelligence, or you want to pick a business application and then use Java to solve this, right? So it could be computer science, it could be engineering, commerce, whatever be the core subject. So that should become the basis or the fundamental for you to build that knowledge. We are now going to stretch learning. Now, a project work also helps you stretch the theoretical knowledge that you have, to application, right? Now, why are we using this word stretch here? Stretch is, where you're not restricting your thought process to, some of them by heart, or you may just get the basics or the fundamentals of what you have learned at school or from the textbooks. Now, it requires a different set of thought process on how you identify a problem that will fit into what you have learned at school in terms of any management principle or a formula on how you apply that formula to this problem and solve, right? So that's going to take some stretch from you to really think about it. And the next step is around student engagement. Right? Student engagement is about application of knowledge in how we identify a real world problem that is linked to course, and how we build relationships wherein you can leverage all the management skills that we talked of earlier. So projects, they provide you the opportunity, and basically, when it's going to be a group activity wherein you've got 3 or 4 of your colleagues or your fellow students who are going to work alongside you in solving a real business or a social problem, right? It also gives you a sense of belongingness and accomplishment, and not just for you, for the entire team. And it helps you build that relationship. And sometimes it could be just, that's what is going to happen in a company. You might be pulled into a meeting. You could have some colleagues that you don't know of from a different department, and how you all come together to solve an issue. Now moving. So you would see, we are transitioning gradually with the way the slides have moved. We first talked about some technical skills in terms of understanding or knowing how to define a problem. We talked about how you need to pick up some management skills on how you really engage with others in solving, and we talked about building critical skills. So these are from a skill perspective, and then we graduated to as a student how you try to pick up a project that is part and parcel of the core subject that you have at college or at school, and how you learn to apply that, how you try and build a team for yourself, with some of your fellow students, and then you start deploying the technical skills, the management skills, and the critical skills that you have gained. Now, all these skills collectively, when you work with a team and when you employ all these skills, that's when you're going to build the skills that are needed for the job, right? So, project work will provide you for the very first time in your learning life a way to measure your personal, social, and leadership skills. It also will help you understand the positive behaviors that you're able to demonstrate, that you can see from your fellow colleagues, and of course, is also going to bring out the negativity out in the open, right? Okay. To sum it all, it's the five skills that are very critical for any job. And believe me, the first interview that's going to give you the job is when you're able to demonstrate how you have all these five skills, right? You're not going to have an opportunity to say, okay, here is my communication skill, this is how I speak, and this is my integrity, this is how I speak. No. But whether the person, the interviewer records it on paper or not, but broadly, these are the five things that you should try and demonstrate in not any particular sequence, but with how you quote certain instances, events, in how you have gone about your academic pursuits and your live project experience. So communication skills is self-explanatory, and we have also discussed earlier. The teamwork, we also spoke about it. The interpersonal skills, we also spoke about how it is critical when you're working in teams, and also how it is important to manage the stakeholder communication. And then we also talked about problem solving skills, wherein you're trying to showcase your individual ability to provide some critical thinking, at the same time leverage on the expertise of people and how you can collectively bring all this to the forefront. Now, integrity, right? This is the core of who you are, who we are. And integrity at workplace, integrity at how we have gone about picking the right problem, integrity at how we have gone about keeping everybody communicated at the same time with the real message without without hiding any facts from people. Integrity at how you are sincere in terms of maintaining your interpersonal relationships, the integrity in terms of how the entire project is going to be managed and how you keep every other stakeholder, it could be your college, your teachers, your guide, your customers, everybody properly informed. I think it's going to play a pivotal role in how you become successful in the entire execution. That is how people are going to know you for who you are, and that will definitely help you build good sponsorship amongst every other individual who you have touched through the execution of this project. This is a summary slide on skills development. Broadly, it's about job skills and then the domain. And domain, as we seen earlier, is what we have learned at school from the textbooks. And of course, through the project also, you would have learned the domain. So we have taken an example of IT, wherein you may have multiple technologies, and within technology, there could be multiple platforms. And for instance, if you're going to learn about Java, you're going to learn about coding, you're going to learn about the best best tools, techniques, or the best way to code. You're also going to learn about coding for outcomes, right? It's so important to understand what your customers want. It's so important understanding the problem exactly that you need to solve. And you should remember that we are not coding just for fun. Well, you may be getting a lot of fun while you code if you really enjoy doing it. But we have to remember that the coding has to be aimed at solving the business problem, whatever that is, the outcome that is expected by your stakeholder. And of course, finally, having that discipline in terms of documenting and maintaining the right version control every time there's going to be a change, right? Other skills, there's communication. And in communication, it's all about, it's like a triangle, right? So you listen to the person who is talking to you, and you should make it a point to also tell, right? Sometimes it's about listening, it's about giving feedback, or it's about taking feedback, or it's about being participative in a conversation, and also reflecting on the conversation, right? In terms of what we have learned, what we have said, how we spoke, how so it's about communication. And coming down to problem solving, it's so critical about identifying what the real problem is, and not getting confused with the symptom of the problem to be the real problem. Or most of the times, what we want, we kind of write it down as the problem, right? So a problem solving is it's so important that we are able to identify the right problem, and of course analyzing it, having the right method to solve the problem, picking up one, not one but multiple solutions, and then wearing the critical thinking hat in terms of picking that right solution to a problem, so that again, we'll bring the whole integrity thing into this picture on how we pick the right solution, considering the best interest of everyone, right? Thank you.